episode 80. It's a crazy number, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about today. Yeah, we've had some news, we've had some fights coming up, but we all know why we're here. Yesterday, out of the blue, it gets announced Jake Paul versus Gervonta Tank Davis. What? So we're gonna dive all into that, and we'll talk about the fights coming up this weekend and some other stuff. But let's hop into that first. Oh my God, I am blown away that this is actually happening. This is a fight that kind of has been thought about for years. Ever since Jake entered boxing, Gervonta was one of the guys that he initially called out and said, "I want to fight you," and everyone was just kind of like, like, oh, whatever. It's Jake Paul is just calling out everyone. He's calling out Conor McGregor, but now that Jake has become what he is in the sport, and he's actually able of getting these fights, and everybody wants to fight him because they saw the viewership and the money they pulled in with the Mike Tyson event, they all want a piece of the pie. And we know Tank. Tank is not somebody who anymore really is chasing belts or chasing legacy. He's chasing the payday. And he looks at this Jake Paul fight and he says, "I can be Jake Paul." And Jake is actually wanting to take on these big spectacle fights. And we heard that the terms were agreed to for this fight before the first Lamont Roach fight with Tank. And then it was after that, it became a draw that they were like, okay, why don't we course correct, take a rematch? And then they decided not to do a rematch and go straight into this one just recently. And I don't know, man. It's so weird to me that they decided, not to. And honestly, I'm really just shocked that Tank is actually taking this fight. I don't know. I feel like he's somebody who's always called Jake Paul a clown, and now he's doing business and gonna fight him. But maybe he's thinking, oh, I can be the one to shut him up. And listen, let's just be clear here. Gervonta Davis is going to outbox the hell of Jake Paul 10 out of 10 days a week. 7 out of 7 days a week, sorry. This won't even be remotely close in that kind of sense, but here's the thing. Gervonta Davis is a lightweight. Jake Paul is a cruiserweight, who's even campaigned at heavyweight. If you look at these guys, they've literally fought at 100 pounds difference. So it doesn't make any sense. This is obviously going to be an exhibition, November 14th in Atlanta, Georgia. For new listeners, I live near Atlanta, so I was blown away that this fight was happening here. I don't know why it's happening here, but that's honestly the best part of it to me, is that I'm actually going to do everything in my power to attend this fight, and I can't believe that what is probably going to end up being the biggest fight of the year, at least in terms of mainstream and viewership and stuff like that, is going to happen so close, and I'll be able to go to it. I'm so excited, but taking myself out of it, I think the fight is stupid. Yeah, sure, I think it's stupid. Am I going to watch it? Absolutely. I want to watch it very bad. I mean, I had said before, I was like, this Anthony Joshua talk makes way less sense for Jake Paul than it does the Tank fight, because at least when Tank, he has a 70-pound weight advantage. You can't tell me he doesn't have a chance against Tank. He has no chance against AJ, even though Gervonta's a better fighter than AJ. AJ is twice the size of Gervonta. Literally, he weighs like he weighs as much as two Gervonta Davises. So, I mean, like, this fight's a lot less dangerous for Jake, and we're really going to find out, okay, is size the difference? Because we're going to see Tank outbox him, and I'll say this right now, I would be shocked if Jake Paul wins this fight. I do not think that Jake Paul wins this fight. It doesn't matter because it's not going to go in their records, but Gervonta Davis, even if he's the smaller guy, the only way he loses is if he gets knocked out. He will 1,000% win on the cards because he's just going to box better than Jake Paul. And that's where I think it's crazy that Jake is taking this, because his only shot really is to get a knockout and to show and to have his just huge size and potentially power advantage, go up. And I'm also curious, what are the rules? We know it's probably going to be an exhibition. We don't know how many rounds. I'm guessing 10. I hope it's not 8. It'll probably be 10. How long are the rounds? Hopefully 3 minutes. They're probably going to be using way bigger gloves. I absolutely think that they're going to be using big gloves. They're going to, I really hope that they're scoring it. If it's not a scored fight, then it's like, what's the point? We need a winner. And I would expect that the weight is going to be very interesting. And if you remember with Floyd Mayweather versus Logan Paul a few years back, It was something along the lines of Logan could not weigh over 190 pounds. Mayweather had to weigh over, I think, 155, and they were both right around those weights. Now, this one, Jake said back on like the Ariel Helwani show a few months back, obviously after the Tank fight had, they'd agreed terms, but then it died down, and now it's back on. So I'm guessing it's the same terms. He said it would be 10 3-minute rounds, and he said that it would be a 195-pound weight limit. So obviously that means Jake has to weigh in below 195. Tank is obviously going to weigh in below 195. I'm curious if the commission is going to say, okay, for you guys to fight, you need to at least be somewhat of a close weight, so Tank doesn't come in at a lightweight. They may want him to beef up. I'm curious how much Tank will weigh for this fight, because I think that Tank is pretty naturally a 135-pounder. Maybe he can bulk up and go up to like 150. That's probably the biggest I see him going. He is a really small guy. So I don't know. And I'm also curious, is his power going to carry up with him, or is his power going to be effective against somebody so much bigger? Because we may find out, Gervonta Davis has a ton of power against guys his size. And like that's not, I don't blame him for that. Like Jake's way bigger than him. It'd be hard to hurt him. But maybe he can. Could you imagine if Tank knocked out Jake Paul? It's going to be nuts. It's a huge spectacle, crazy event. There's no word from Tank yet. He hasn't even commented on it, which is very much in line with him. And, I've said it, he's had a disappointing career for me, just because I feel like there's so many big fights he could have had. And even this, let's be honest, he is kind of ducking the Lamont Roach rematch. He should have taken that. And especially because that was going to be a 50-50 fight. The first fight literally was a draw. So it does seem like he's kind of avoiding it and taking the easy paycheck. But, you can't really blame him when he's going to get that much money to fight somebody who's not at all on his level, even if he's way bigger than him. So, again, this is kind of similar to the Mike Tyson fight, where we don't really know what to expect. But it's going to be on Netflix November 14th. I can't wait. And this is going to be a huge story. I can't wait for the first press conference. Part of me just has this uneasy feeling that Tank could just randomly wake up and decide he doesn't want to do anymore and pull out, because he's the kind of guy to do that, just with his everything. He's had a lot of issues in and out of the ring and with his career, and not knowing what he wants to do, and not being motivated, not putting in the hard work ethic, and so I'm a little bit worried that, dude, if you don't come in ready, he is way bigger than you. So who knows? I'm excited to see it. It should be an awesome event, and I'm going to be there. So yeah, I can't believe that they actually made this fight. It is, I think this may be even crazier than the Mike Tyson fight, just because it makes no sense whatsoever. And it is stupid. It shouldn't be being made, but I'm still excited. As for the Anthony Joshua fight with Jake, we're hearing that one was having positive conversations. Apparently talks collapsed over the network deal. Obviously, AJ is exclusive to DAZN. Jake would want the fight to be on Netflix. So that's where I think the issue came up. Now, I did see Eddie Hearn say that fight is not dead. They said that they knew that Jake was going to be fighting, was likely to take another fight before the AJ fight, and that the AJ fight was being discussed for February or March. But now that this fight is happening, they're not going to wait until November to make a decision with AJ, even though they've been waiting for a year. They're now likely to take another fight instead, and I'm guessing they're probably going to go to Ghana and fight Tony Yoka, which I would have much preferred to see Jake Paul, Anthony Joshua than either of those options, but I have no complaints with Jake versus Tank, and yeah, this is going to be an absolute mega event, and I cannot wait to see it go down. But without further ado, it's fun to talk about Jake versus Tank, but let's talk about some of the fights we got coming up this weekend. We've got a really, really fun roster of fights on the calendar for this weekend. So the UFC card we're getting this week is actually a really good one. It's in Shanghai. They are sacrificing Johnny Walker to the Wolves. He's fighting Zhang Ming Yang. Now, if you know about Zhang Ming Yang, this guy has never been out of the first round, win or loss. He's never left the first round. Johnny Walker is on his way out, you could say. He's not been on the best run. He hasn't even been super active, but he's lost his last, two fights. So, yeah, lost his last two fights. He could probably use a win, but, Zhang Ming Yang is a really big prospect in that division at light heavyweight that they're probably looking to boost up. I think Zhang Ming Yang 1,000% wins this fight. I think it'd be a huge upset if Walker won, so I'm expecting that one to end in the first round. I'm excited to see it. Co-main event, which really could be the main event, kind of should be, Brian Ortega versus Aljamain Sterling. I can't believe this is on the prelims. Or sorry, not the prelims. This is the co-main event to a fight night. This could you could argue this could be co-main event on a pay-per-view. Obviously, it wouldn't, and I'm just talking there, but this just definitely deserves on the huge card and probably to be main event. It's a spectacular fight. As for who I think wins, I think Aljamain Sterling wins this. I'm going to be honest. When he fought Evloev, I actually thought that he won that fight. I didn't love what I saw from Ortega against Diego Lopez. I think Aljamain Sterling should win this. We're going to see how much Brian Ortega has left. I feel like, Aljamain has just been Alja's been a little bit better as of recent. He's looked better in the last few fights. He didn't miss weight like Ortega did. Well, I guess he was sick, but still. So I'm picking Sterling there. Below that, you're going to have Sergey Pavlovich versus Waldo Cortez Acosta. That's a really interesting fight. I kind of feel like Pavlovich may take that one, but Cortez Acosta is on a good run. That's a really good heavyweight scrap. And then, yeah, man, just a lot of other fun fights on this card. Some good prospects here and there. So I'm excited for it. It's going to be a really good one. That co-main event is so good. It's honestly probably going to steal the show for me. But moving on from that, we've also got some boxing. Jack Rafferty versus Mark Chamberlain over in Altrincham, or I think it's like kind of like Manchester. And that's for the British and Commonwealth belts at 140. It's a terrific fight. It really is. Chamberlain, was on this rise to become a world title challenger. Then he loses to Josh Padley at Wembley in a big upset. Hasn't really done a whole lot since then. He had one 8-round fight where he didn't really look very good. And then you have Jack Rafferty, who kind of sprung out of nowhere and has been, defending this British and Commonwealth for like the 4th time now, I think. Or maybe it's his 3rd defense, but, beat Henry Turner and just looked phenomenal since then. And he's just been on a really, really good run. So I'm excited to see this fight a lot. I think it's going to be an absolute war. It's a 50-50. It's hard to say who I think wins because I think Mark Chamberlain has fought at higher levels and has been targeted for higher levels than Jack Rafferty has. But it's hard to ignore the run that Rafferty has been on and how dominant and exciting he's been. I think he's like the last 3 wins have all been by knockout. It may even go further than that. I've just seen the last 3 fights because they've been, on big TV. But yeah, I mean, this is a phenomenal fight. As for who I think is gonna win, I think I think Mark Chamberlain really could win. But I'm going to pick Jack Rafferty just because of the run he's been on, just because I think this is his area too. I think he's from Manchester. Yeah, I'm going to pick him, but I could be wrong. Co-main event, you got Zach Miller versus Leon Woodstock. The whole Woodstock thing with him being a prisoner, it's just been kind of cringy to me. It's been weird, but I guess you got to promote the fight in some way. I think Zach Miller's going to win this fight. I mean, Woodstock didn't even win his last fight. He lost against Kurt Walker, who Kurt Walker's decent, but I don't know how this nominates him for a Commonwealth title fight. So I think Zach Miller beats him. Then again, I thought Zach Miller lost to Masoud Abdullah, but yeah, I'm still going to take Miller there. You got Jack Turner returning. He's always fun. Blows everyone out super quickly. He's in with an undefeated opponent in Nicholas Muguruza. So curious how that one will go, but I still see Jack Turner winning this. Maybe it's a challenge for him because he's had no challenges as of yet in his career. But yeah, and then you got, like I mentioned, Henry Turner. He's back on this card. Lewis Richardson returning to make his 2nd fight as a pro. So some interesting fights. It's really not a big card outside of that. You got Rafferty, Chamberlain, and Miller Woodstock, and then Jack Turner in a go fight, but that's pretty much as far as it goes. So who knows? Should be a fun card though. At least that main event is going to be really fun. But let's talk about this MVP doubleheader. So MVP, they're calling it Fight Island, kind of like how the UFC did when they were during the pandemic. But yeah, they've got 2 cards this weekend, back to back in Orlando. Obviously, the first one is going to be Most Valuable Prospects 14, headlined by Jean-Paul Rivera versus Daniel Bailey. Jean-Paul Rivera is a really, really solid fighter that they've got there. I expect him to win in exciting fashion. Co-main event, the return of Corey Marksman, who's a really, really good fighter, and he's had some great wins on the MVP banner recently, so he's back in an 8-rounder. You got Yoelvis Gomez versus Edwin Humane Jr. That's actually a pretty even fight. I'm excited for that. The pro debut of Jamal Harvey. Everyone's really excited about him. Taylor Jones versus Alexander Rios. That's a nice fight. There's a lot of really interesting stuff on this card. I think it's going to be a fun. Excited for it. I think MVP always puts on really good shows with their prospects fights. But yeah, I mean, and that's just the appetizer, really. You're going to get some really, really nice prospects in action. And then on Saturday night, you're going to get their first ever fight night. And this is genuinely a very, very good card of boxing. Main event is going to be Yankiel Rivera versus Angelino Cordova for the WBA interim flyweight championship. So, yeah, I mean, the winner of this is, I mean, I guess that Rivera, actually, no. Rivera is not an interim champion yet. So the winner of this will be officially mandatory for Ricardo Sandoval. And that's, I mean, you got Galia Fai in there, Kenshiro Taraji still hanging around, Kui, Yabuki. I mean, flyweight's a really interesting division with a lot of good fighters in it. So winner of this will break in there. I think, obviously, I'm going to pick Yankiel Rivera. I think he's a very, very impressive fighter from what we've seen of him as a pro. But I do think that Cordova is also really good, and he's going to give Rivera a very tough fight. So and Rivera's shown, like, he can... Not like you can find a way to beat him. He's beaten everyone and by a good margin, but he can lose some rounds. And I think that Cordova is going to come in here and he's going to make it a closer fight than Rivera's expecting. But I do still think Rivera walks out with the dub. And yeah, I'm excited for that. It's a great main event. Co-main event, you're gonna have Yoenis Tellez, who's looking to knock on the door of the elites of the 154-pound division. He's already got a WBA interim title. He's defending it against number 1, Abbas Baru, who's been waiting for a big fight. This is a really interesting one. I think that Tellez wins this. I'm happy that Abbas is getting his moment because he's been waiting for a fight for a while. But Yoenis Tellez, I think, is a top 10 guy in the best division in the sport. I think he's ready to get in there and mix it up with some really, really great fighters and really stamp himself on the scene. So that one's going to be great. You've also got Lucas Body returning. He's fighting former world champion Roger Gutierrez in a WBA lightweight title eliminator. So winner of this is going to be mandatory for Gervonta Davis, which is very interesting. Or I don't know if this is a final eliminator, so maybe it won't be mandatory, but at least in very good contention for that. Again, I don't think that Lucas Body is going to fight Jake Paul if Jake Paul beats Tank. I expect Tank to probably lose that belt. The WBA did say they're going to review his status as champion, and I think that they should. If we're being honest, he should be stripped, as should Lamont Roach if Roach is no longer fighting at 130. They just can't be sitting on these belts. So I won't be mad if Tank, is stripped of the belt, and then this fight has a way more importance. But, the thing with Lucas Body is he's good, but I think he is beatable. I think if you look at his last few fights, they've all been very close. You look at the H2O Sil fight, H2O, was before he got knocked out, of course, H2O was dominating that fight. Lucas Body hadn't won a good punch of the fight, really. I mean, H2O was completely outboxing him fundamentally. Then he just lands an absolute knockout for the ages, I think the knockout of the year, and knocks him out. And then since then, he's had 2 other fights, both of which are very competitive, both of which you can argue that the other guy won. So this is another tough step up. I'm going to pick Lucas Body. I would not at all be surprised if he got upset here. I would not at all. And I expect it to be a close fight, but we'll see. And then you've also got some women's world championships. Jasmine Artiga defends her WBA super flyweight title against Lynn Sandstrom. I'm going to pick Artiga. I don't know much about Sandstrom. I was not impressed with Artiga's last fight against Regina Chavez. I didn't think that she won that. I thought it was a blatant robbery. But, maybe she'll show something more this time. And she is undefeated, so I think it was just an off night. And then you've also got Stephanie Hahn defending her lightweight title against Paulina Angel. They said Holly Holm, who's now ranked, I think, really highly with the WBA, she's going to be in attendance to watch Stephanie Hahn fight. Hahn is signed MVP, so it seems like they're wanting to make that fight between Holly Holm and Stephanie Hahn, and I expect Stephanie Hahn to win. Lightweight is a really interesting division with the women. You got Terry Harper around there, Caroline Dubois, Beatrice Ferreira, and like I said, Holly Holm and Stephanie Hahn. So that'll be good. Jermaine Ortiz, he was meant to fight Steve Claggett. Unfortunately, Steve Claggett's injured. He's now fighting Ambiorix Bautista in a 10-rounder. I don't know much about Bautista. I'm expecting Jermaine Ortiz to take this one. And yeah, so those are your 6 main fights that are all 10 rounds. In addition to that, you've got Nat No Love Dove, who's a really solid prospect with them. Jocelyn Camarillo, who's a new MVP signing. And then a really interesting 6-round fight between Chris Avila and Ariel Perez. Chris Avila is kind of Nate Diaz's sidekick, as I call him. But he's an MMA guy who's come over and been very successful in his boxing. He's been on some MVP shows, some Misfits shows, fighting guys like that. But hey, he's taking on a legitimate prospect here, and I expect this to be a very competitive and fun fight. I think Ariel Perez is probably going to win it, but I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I love that they're putting that fight together. So that's the MVP card this weekend. Those are my picks. I think it's going to be awesome. I can't wait. I love this doubleheader, and yeah, it should be good. Tonight we also see the ending of the PFL tournament with the middleweights, light heavyweights, and heavyweights. So obviously your main event is going to be Fabian Edwards versus Dalton Rasta. They've had a very kind of spicy build-up this week, so I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to pick Fabian Edwards to win that one, but I'm very prepared for the upset. We've seen a lot of these Americans, especially the wrestlers, find a way to get around them. But Fabian Edwards has found his way to the top here, and I expect him to hold on to the crown as, the favorite here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Rasta finds a way to beat him. Also on that card, you have got the heavyweight championship between Alexander Romanov and Oleg Popov. This is an interesting one. I can't even really remember. I feel like the PFL has really been undervaluing the heavyweights. They weren't even going to put them on the main card of this, which I think is just crazy. Like, it's still a title fight, even if they're not the most exciting fights in MMA. As for my pick, I'm seeing that Popov is the favorite. I don't know. I just kind of want to switch it up. Let's say Romanov. I'll pick him. And then before that, you're going to have Sullivan Cowley versus Antonio Carlos Jr. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why. I feel like these fights have not been these divisions have not been quite as exciting to cover. The heavier ones, Edwards and Rost, I'm excited for, but I'm not even super excited for these other divisions. I couldn't even remember who was in the titles contention. I'll probably lean towards Cowley, but who knows? I could be wrong. I really don't know. So that should be a fun card. They've got a lot of interesting guys on the prelims. Impa Kasongane is back. Some good fights here, like Silveira Ramazanov is good. St. Louis Ray, Magomed Aviana. Yeah, so there's some stuff on there that I'm looking forward to, but we'll just see how it goes. And then the final event we'll talk about that's coming up this weekend, the return of Jake Wiley coming off his good defeat against George Kambosos Jr. He is now going to fight Yusuf Dib, who's had some fights with Liam Wilson, and this is a really interesting fight, I think, because I think it's going to be competitive. I think that this is not necessarily Wiley getting a step up or like a bounce back, in a sense like that. I think that this is a litmus test for Wiley because this is Matchroom's second fight with him. And in the first fight, he was just a short notice guy coming in to fight Kambosos, who he was not as good as. Now we're going to see, okay, how good are you really? Because Dib is a solid guy. He's going to give you a tough fight, but we want to see, what level you're at. So I'm going to pick Jake Wiley to win this fight. However, I would not be surprised in the slightest if Dib can find his way around him and beat him because I just think it's that competitive a fight. Co-main event is Sky Nicholson taking on Urvaji Singh. Singh is 12-3. I completely think that Sky Nicholson's going to beat her, but this is another step up. And after this, I think they're going to try and get her a title shot at 122 this year. Hopefully that's against Ellie Scottney, but I doubt that happens this year. And yeah, nothing really else outside of that on the card. Alex Lapai, who's a heavyweight, he's back in a 6-rounder. So we'll see, but that doubleheader is pretty good. I'm excited to see Sky back, and Wiley Dib is an interesting fight. Speaking of Australian boxing, we did have another card yesterday. I was not able to actually watch it because, as everyone knows, No Limit does not have a U.S. broadcaster, and they charge everything on pay-per-view in Australia, which sucks. It really sucks because these cards are not worth. And I thought that they were like cheap pay-per-views. They're not. They're like $60, which is just. I don't know. I can't get behind that. I really can't. But yeah, so Nikita Tszyu, he had a first-round knockout. He obviously had not fought in about a year, but came off a long layoff. And I think his name was Michael Ismaili. So, I mean, it's solid for him to come back and hopefully he can stay active and get another fight in this year and enter some interesting fight, discussions. You also had a first-round knockout win from Michael Zarafa as well. He's, been looking for a big fight. I mean, he keeps on talking about wanting to fight Tim Tszyu when he's a middleweight and Tszyu is a super welterweight. Tim Tszyu already needs to move down, I think. I think that he's too small to fight the guys like Fedor and Bakar Murtazaliev. As we saw, he's been stopped in both those fights. But I think that I would much rather see him go down to welterweight. If he's going to move weight divisions, I think he should be going down, not up. So the Zarafa fight really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Brock Jarvis had a stoppage win on there as well. I saw a lot of people complaining just because it's like, you pay pay-per-view for this, and the fights aren't even competitive. They're just, undefeated fighters defending, or not undefeated, all of them, but, big A sides. They're just all A sides fighting scrubs. So that sucks, but, hopefully we get some more competitive fights there. Moving on from that, let's talk about some other news. It was just announced Vergil Ortiz Jr. is going to be taking on Erickson Lubin in Fort Worth on November 8th. For his WBC interim super welterweight championship. Yeah, there was talks about Xander Zayas. Erickson Lubin we knew this fight was in talks for about a week, and knew that it was getting finalized. Erickson Lubin, his purse bid to fight Bakram Murtazaliev, as you know, he was the mandatory there, was just a few days ago, and he, decided not to take it. He's not doing that fight. And so, he's because of this. So he's now taking this opportunity, which probably makes more sense financially wise. It's now been ordered for Bakram Murtazaliev to fight Josh Kelly. We'll see if Josh Kelly takes that. He may, because it is a world title, but I totally think that Bakram beats him. I think Bakram is a monster. And, he's so avoided that even his mandatories, when they get ordered to fight for a world title, they're still avoiding him, which is crazy. And I don't want to say Lubin is ducking him, because he's not avoiding Murtazaliev to then go and fight, someone easy. He's going to fight Vergil Ortiz, who I would probably favor against Bakram Murtazaliev. So he's even taking the tougher fight maybe. But, it is interesting. But that should be a good fight. I'm excited for that. We also had the announcement of the Canelo versus Crawford undercard. And this had a lot of people talking. A lot of people think it's a horrible card and all this. I don't. I think it's good. I don't think it's an absolute super card. I don't think it's the greatest fight card we've ever seen. But I do think that there's some interesting fights on there. And I think that we're going to have like a 10-fight card in total. It just feels like some of these could have probably gone onto the main card on Netflix. Most notably, Sergey Boachuk fighting Brandon Adams in a rematch. I would have liked to have seen Boachuk fight someone else. Apparently, Tom Loeffler said that they did turn down the Boots fight, which Boachuk didn't even know was offered. They turned it down because they wanted to see him fight, get this rematch, because they had this on the table as well, and they thought it made more sense, which is just straight up taking the easier fight. Even though Adams did beat Boachuk and he stopped him, I think that was a while ago, and Boachuk, I would 1,000% choose him to win in this fight. You also have Ivan Ditchko versus Jermaine Franklin. That's a really interesting one. Jermaine Franklin is on the verge of getting a Moses Atauma fight potentially, but Ditchko, I think, is probably going to win this. I think he's like 15-0 with 14 knockouts, and he's almost like Bakhtir Jalalev with having a really great record and good amateur stuff, but we've never seen him really mix it in with some other big pros. So hopefully that's the change here, and we're going to see him put on a good performance against Jermaine Franklin and maybe even beat him. We've also got Rito Tsutsumi returning. Sultan Al Mohammed is making his pro debuts. Is going to be another one of those Saudi prospects. Steven Nelson's back. He's fighting Reiko Santana in a 10-rounder. And then Marco Verde as well. He doesn't have an opponent yet, but he'll be on this card. So really nice set of prospects and some good competitive fights. I think the Muhammad Al-Akel fight on Netflix is still going to be a 10-rounder, which just doesn't make any sense to me because he's only fought journeymen in like 6-rounders. So I don't really know why he's fighting a 10-rounder against a scrub as well, but it is what it is. We also had the announcement on that same Instagram Live with Dana White. He also announced UFC Vancouver, which is going to be headlined with a phenomenal middleweight fight. And that is, of course, Reinier de Ridder versus Fluffy Hernandez. This is a fight that just started getting talked about. They both just fought in the last month, and they're already, booked for their next fight on October 18th. So quick turnaround for both. This is a really good fight. They are 5 and 6 in the middleweight rankings, and the winner of this is going to be getting the next title shot, I think. So obviously, Imavov and Kaio, whoever wins that fight is going to get the Hamzat fight, and then whoever wins between RDR and Fluffy is in line to fight the winner of that eventual fight. So I really like this. I think it's a great matchup. I think these guys both just surged in the division and been active, and they're now, at the top. Chito Vera versus Ayman Zahabi is in the co-main. That's a solid fight. I'm curious if Chito Vera can win that one. I don't know. He just hasn't had a lot of great wins recently. He's been losing some fights, but it's a good one. Kevin Holland is back against Mike Malott. That's a great fight, I think. Kevin Holland is this his 5th fight of the year he's going for? So I think he's going to maybe actually be able to get the 6 fights for this year. He's insanely active. And then Manon Foro versus Jasmine Jasudavicius, which I think is a really competitive and awesome fight. Top 5 in the flyweight division. So you got 4 really well matched and exciting fights on a fight night. That's one of the better fight nights UFC's had this year, I think. It looks very promising. And yeah, I'm really liking that card. They also just announced officially we're going to be getting Rob Font versus Raul Rosas Jr. We heard a while ago that was going to be happening, but now it's official. And as well, they also have now announced that we're gonna see on the Rio card Davison Figueiredo versus Montel Jackson. So that's another good one. So some fun fights being added to the fight nights by UFC. We talked a second ago about the IBF now ordering Bakram versus Kelly, which I think is gonna go one way if it happens. But they also ordered Opataya to face Hussein Shinkara. I'm okay with this. I knew this was going to happen, and I'm glad that the Zurdo fight isn't possible right now because otherwise I would have been upset about this getting ordered. But Zurdo's busy. Zurdo's injured. He can't fight, so keep Opataya busy. So he does have to take care of his mandatory. Apparently, Sin Cara turned down a 6-figure step-aside offer where Jai Opataya would fight Chris Bum-Smith, which is much more of a fight that I think we'd all want to see. But, I don't really blame him. He already missed out on one opportunity to fight for the title, so he wants to get another one. In addition to that, CBS has been ordered to fight Roman Fress for the WBO interim title, so he'll then be kind of mandatory for Zurdo to do a rematch if he wins that fight. So they're both going to be in okay fights. I would just much rather see Opataya versus CBS, but boxing politics has to get in the way. Francis Ngannou is confident that Deontay Wilder boxing match is going to be next for him, and he's hopeful it happens this year. And he says that he hits harder than Wilder. Now, I really like this. I actually think that that's a very even fight. I just don't know about either of those guys getting into it with a big puncher with how old they are and, them both getting knocked out pretty badly last year. But, hey, this is a very competitive fight. I think it'd be a huge money fight. Do it in Africa maybe. I do feel for the PFL because of all they put into the Francis Ngannou deal in PFL Africa, and he's just not, keeping up his side of the bargain, and he's going to try and go back to boxing again. But, yeah, I think that this is a pretty solid fight, and I doubt it happens, but I'd be down for it. Frankie Edgar versus Jimmy Rivera has been added to the October 4th BKFC 82 card, both returning for that one. That's a pretty solid fight. A lot of people are excited about it. That BKFC card is looking very interesting. They just had the press conference right now. I'm sure it's very chaotic, but yeah, that should be a fun card. Andy Ruiz is apparently back training with Manny Robles, and he's targeting a January return. And Andy Ruiz has just been plagued with inactivity. He did finally come back last year in August, but has not fought since then. It was a draw with Jarrell Miller, a fight a lot of people thought he lost, and he had like a broken hand. So I don't know. Part of me is just retire, dude. But hey, if he can come back and be in a fun fight, why not? Speaking of fun, interesting fights, Brandon Glanton versus Rocky Fielding has been announced for October 1st in Lagos, Nigeria. Really random fight. Rocky Fielding hasn't fought in like 3 years. He's coming back at cruiserweight against Brandon Glanton, who's coming off a really good performance against CBS. I don't know if I favor him in that fight. I really don't. I'd probably lean towards Glanton, but this is just so random. It's on a Wednesday in October in Nigeria, promoted by Amir Khan, with Fielding coming out of retirement to fight a random top 20 cruiserweight. It's very odd. You're going to have Richard Kami and Dan Aziz on the undercard. So, hey, you know what? Maybe this will be a fun viewing if those guys are in decent fights. But I don't know. It's a really odd fight. But out of the nowhere. But I'm okay with it. I'm excited. Speaking of Jarrell Miller, we talked about him a second ago. Michael Hunter has officially been pulled from that fight. Miller's calling him a ducker and a clown, whatever, But I think this is beyond his control. I think that Don King stepped in, and we heard about him trying to sue TKO. Maybe they actually did say, all right, fine, we just won't have the fight. I don't know if he's still scheduled to fight Kubrat Pulev on October 4th. I hope he is now, because it would be kind of a shame for him to get pulled from both fights. But, I think that he also is probably kind of done with Don King and maybe wanting to take him to court. But if not, maybe he just sticks around and he takes the WBA regular heavyweight title fight, which I'd be okay with. Matchroom this week also announced the official undercard for Boots Ennis versus Usman Lima. And it's got some really interesting fights. You got Khalil Ko versus Jesse Hart. Big step up there. We did know this was happening. Co-main event. I'm excited for it. It's an interesting step up. Then they got Alexis Barriere versus Guido Vianello, which is a really, really interesting fight. Barriere, they've been trying to get him on a card and they're finally going to have him here. And he's in with Guido Vianello, who did just lose to Richard Torres, but in my opinion, maybe even beaten F.A. Ajagba, and then also beat Arslanbek Makhmudov. So he's a very good heavyweight and will be a very good test for Barriere, and seems like he's parted ways with Top Rank. And then you've also got the return of Zayko and Moses on there. Giorgio Vizzi always making his U.S. debut. Harley Medeiros, Dennis Thompson. And then a really interesting fight. Tamir Smalls is stepping up to 10 rounds, it seems. And he's going to be fighting Jose Roman, who is the guy that beat Jalil Hackett last year. Now, Roman, a lot of people don't think that he won that fight, including myself. But he was still made it a decent test. And Tamir Smalls, I don't know if he's on Jalil Hackett's level. He's been a good prospect. This is his first real fight, so I'm excited for that. I think it's a really solid card they put together, and yeah, I'm looking forward to October 11th. It's looking pretty good. Two fights have been changed to no contests. Two drug cheats. Vito Mielnicki has a no contest because Connor Coyle, who, remember, they fought in February to a draw, which don't know how that happened because there's no way that Mielnicki didn't win that fight. But regardless, it was a draw. Coyle has been seemingly popped for Peds, and that is now a no contest for them both. And Sofian Kati's huge win over Nathan Heaney, apparently he had some help in it. And he's also been popped there. Honestly, I'm not even surprised about the Kati one, just because he did look like very destructive in there and kind of derailed Nathan Heaney's career, so I feel for him. But yeah, that's where we're at in that sense. But yeah, so two more guys this week got popped. And I also saw that Jose Felix, who fought Lewis Crocker and, more importantly, beat Gary Coley a couple years back. He's also just got popped and got banned for like 5 years from UCAD. So really weird. It's weird how late it can take to get these tests in order and stuff. But yeah, a lot of no contests and suspensions and stuff this week. Speaking of people not playing nicely and not following the rules, Brian Battle has been officially cut from the UFC. He was 7-1 in the UFC. He was decent, but he kept on missing weight and he wasn't being a professional, so he's been removed. I feel for him. And he said, he was like, I won't blame the UFC if they don't want to continue this relationship, just because he hasn't been being reliable. I mean, he was at welterweight, missed weight by a lot, so they bring him up to middleweight and he misses weight there too. It's like, dude, come on, lock in. And yeah, so they've cut ties with him, and I don't really blame him. It's just disappointing. Brian Norman Jr. has extended his deal with Top Rank for a multi-year deal. It's interesting that he's doing that. Obviously, they did get him to a world title, and they probably treat him right, but they don't have a TV deal right now. I'm a little bit surprised that anybody's wanting to keep on making deals with Top Rank. Granted, he's going to have a fight. He's fighting on the big Saudi card, but not everyone else is. So what are you going to do after that? Maybe now with big fights coming back to Atlanta, he can get a fight at the State Farm Arena, but who knows, man? Who knows? Tiara Brown is going to be defending her WBC featherweight world title on September 20th. We don't know against who, but she just announced that she's been added to that OTX card and probably should be headlining, in my opinion, but I won't complain. I'm excited to see her back. It's been a while. She won the title in March, so good to see she's going to have another fight this year. BKFC announced they're coming back to Burgas in Bulgaria November 8th, headlined by Grigor Sauruanian and Pik Jardine. I don't really know either of those guys. And does BKFC have some kind of deal with Bulgaria? Because I feel like it's just like a really weird, really random place, but they have an event there like once or twice a year. So I don't know what that whole deal is, but yeah, it's been added to the calendar on November 8th, so the same day as Ortiz Lubin. Brandon Moore versus DeAndre Savage was announced for September 19th in Detroit, of course, by Salida. It's actually a solid fight, I think. Moore 18-1 with 10 knockouts. DeAndre Savage 10-0 with 10 knockouts. So that's a really tough fight for Brandon Moore, but he's been having some good wins this year, so I'm really excited for that. That should be a good, well-matched heavyweight fight. And they're really trying to Salida's trying to make their claim to say he's the next big thing, and I don't think he is, but America does need a new heavyweight guy to come up the roster, and hopefully I've been saying I'd love to see Brandon Moore fight Jared Anderson. I think it's a good comeback fight for Anderson, and I think that Anderson probably beats him, but that's a good fight, I think. And lastly, Charlie Edwards is going to be fighting Salvador Juarez, who I don't really know much about Juarez, but he's going to be fighting September 5th, the WBC International Super Flyweight title. So Charlie Edwards is moving down So he's getting pretty slim there, it seems. But yeah, I think that's a solid return for him. This Mick Conlan card is actually pretty good for Wasserman. They've got a few 10-rounders on. A lot of interesting Irish names are on the card, and I'm looking forward to it. That's all I've got for today. PFL is about to start. Probably once this drops, the card is starting right then and there. It should be a good card. Really, really fun weekend of fights. And man, November 14th, we have got a super fight coming to Atlanta, Georgia. Jake Paul, Gervonta, Tank Davis. How does it go? I don't know. It could go a million ways, but it's going to be an absolute spectacle. It's going to be crazy, and I cannot wait to watch it and follow it in the build-up over these next few months. But thank you guys so much for listening, and peace out.